Here's a little something that I like to call, from what if you can recall back to the original release date for this back in 2013, a Mega Morphin Grid case study archive. Now, at the time when I did this video originally in 2013, if for those who did watch this video and the next one and the next one after and such in 2013, 5 years ago, this was one of the few Morphin Grid case study archives that I've done back when I was still which I was still doing in 2013, 5 years ago, pre-production work on my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film back when everyone in the fandom was becoming a little aware what kind of fan film of Lost Galaxy I was doing. So in this portion of the Morphin Grid case studies, featurettes on this channel, if you have seen my originals, go check them out. Or actually, I left them unlisted since I'm doing new versions of them anyway. Now, in some of these videos, and starting with this video, if there's some things I forgot that I remember saying in those original videos for a redux, that is okay. I'll just make up whatever I said in this version compared to what I said in the original version. Now, in terms of Mega Morphin Grid case study archives, I was either going to do both the Blue and the Green Rangers back to back, probably in one video, but I decided to do one Ranger at a time, so therefore this whole Mega Morphin case study thing. You see, I was going by whatever, when I meant by Mega Morphin Grid case study, I was going by by this time in the fandom, of course, when I was doing this fan film thing, was when, of course, Power Rangers Megaforce, the 20th incarnation of Power Rangers, came about on Nickelodeon around this time 5 years ago when I did this video. And that's when I came up with Mega Morphin Grid case study archives, when nothing Mega is about unless I'm doing, I don't know, a featurette of me showcasing the Megazords, which I did not have for Lost Galaxy around this time 5 years ago. But that's why I decided, well, screw it. Let's get on with the Blue Ranger. Will James is the Blue Ranger of my Marsh-Verse Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film series. Marsh-Verse in terms of the fact that the characters are not the same as, like, okay, if the Rangers was Leo and Kai in them, like I said in various videos and about and ranted this, like, how many times I'm going to talk about it. So that's one of the reasons why that the characters are totally different from the Lost Galaxy Rangers we all know and love. Recall that last time what I said back in the Tony Marshall video of the Morphin Grid case studies, that in terms of the Rangers being not the same names or so as the original Rangers, you have to understand that when I said that this was going to be a fan film reboot, even back then 5 years ago, I inexplicably and erroneously stated that, but I don't think people, whoever would come across my channel would get the gist or even knew of my name, of course. They just go by, oh, this guy's making some Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film with cutout dolls, and this film is going to suck. But here I am 5 years later remaking this whole video, changing up whatever I said in the originals, or even recording whatever I said in the originals without the stammering and stuttering and some breathing and into the microphone and stuff, which is pretty perverted in my point of view, pardon my speech there. And that's one of the reasons why I had this explicably state that about the reboot stuff. So now when I made the Blue Ranger be the comic relief of the group, I wanted him to be the comic relief of the group. I felt that since the Blue Ranger, and knowing, like I said back in previous videos, that the Blue Ranger needed to, in my version of Lost Galaxy, needed to be the comic relief, since, after all, why give the Green Ranger the comic relief trope? And just like what I said back in both the Tony Marshall and AJ Weems videos, that, the stereotypes of a Power Ranger in terms of personalities, like, we know that the red is always leader, blue is always the loyal one, green is the rebellious comic relief, Yellow Ranger, mostly if the yellow is a girl, is the tomboy of the group, and Pink Ranger is just the feminine, love and heart and girly girl of the team. Except for a few exceptions like Jen from Time Force, who is more of a tough as nails, Pink Ranger and, boss at that. Whereas, Kimberly through Dana and others after Jen would be the happy-go-lucky, pretty girl cheerleader Pink Rangers, like usual as always. So I had to, when I said even explicably about the character personalities, I didn't want to do the Blue Ranger to be the serious, stricken by the books, officer like that which was Kai, the original Blue Lost Galaxy Ranger, outside of my, fan film continuity, which is very disposable and it means nothing to the Power Rangers fandom, which most of my content usually is. But then I look back on some of the things that I did in these original videos and whatever I said. Now, I really wanted to do a Blue Ranger that was comic relief because there is hardly, if you look even in the main line of TV shows of the franchise, Mighty Morphin through right now, even at this time now, since it's been 5 years since I did this video, Super Ninja Steel, that there's not that many comic relief Blue Rangers. A lot of Blue Rangers are always stricken and somewhat, even you have those that are loyal, BFFs to the Red Ranger or BFFs to the Black Ranger and so forth, but there is hardly any comic relief out of Blue Rangers. The only close of comic relief Blue Rangers you're going to get is either, I don't know, Justin from early Turbo or Dax from Overdrive, probably Flynn from RPM, or Coda from Dino Charge. Well, who, by the way, wasn't even around when I did this video. But, you get what I mean, because I wanted my Blue Ranger, my version of the Blue Lost in Galaxy Ranger, be the comic relief big guy of the group, while the Green Ranger is like the Blue Ranger. Because when I do the Green Ranger next time in the next video, which is after this indirectly, I will talk more about that later. So Will James in the Marsh-Verse is not like Kai. Now when I casted these Rangers, when I did those fan castings and when I did this fan film reboot 5 years ago, and it's before I even started filming production on it 5 years ago in September of 2013, when I went with the casting choices of Wes Bentley and Don Cheadle and Katie Cassidy, and also Macaulay Culkin's brother, or one of them as the male Yellow Ranger, I wanted, since I couldn't find an Asian actor to be the Blue Ranger in my version of Lost in Galaxy, because when I said I was doing the reboot, I was not going to do the same where there's 2 girls and 4 guys in the group, like always in Power Rangers, and I decided to do like what Lost in Galaxy Sentai counterpart was by the casting, 5 guys and 1 girl, because I understand. I'll discuss more about that when we get the Thorns video of the case study, and I will explicitly tell you about that again more and more, like how many times I'm going to keep rebuttaling the same rant here. So since I couldn't find an Asian, I decided to, I had no choice but to, and this is one of the biggest sins of why people hate movie reboots and stuff, whitewash half of the cast where the Blue Ranger is actually played by a white person and not Asian. Now, again, like I said, I have nothing against Asian people because there's hardly any Asian actors from Korea or China coming to America and Hollywood to be in Hollywood movies. So that's why I had to find an actor to be the Blue Lost Galaxy Ranger, and it doesn't have to be Kai Chen, who was played by Archie Cow in the original TV show, part of main continuity of Power Rangers, who is, by the way, the GSA's top, officer and whatever, because I decided not to go with Kai in favor of someone, of the Caucasian demographic for this reboot. So for the casting choices originally, aside from, having an Asian Blue Ranger, if the Blue Galaxy Ranger was played by a white person. Now, when I originally did those pre-posed Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan films in the past, until I canceled it, cancel a whole bunch of them, because, again, I will do a video about that, rebuttaling that in a podcast or something later, that originally, my original fan casting choice of, when I was planning on rebooting Power Rangers Lost Galaxy in an alternate reality from the main series, probably, or more like an indirect out of continuation from the original canon, that the Blue Ranger will be played by a white person. Now, 3 actors came in mind before my main choice, which I will announce later. My first fan casting choice for the Blue Galaxy Ranger for Will James, my, OC Blue Ranger of the Marsh-Verse, originally was going to go to, in my fan casting, would be Will Friedle of Boy Meets World, Batman Beyond, and Kim Possible fame, to be the role of my comic relief Blue Galaxy Ranger. Now, I've been long aware of Will Friedle, for those who have seen him on Boy Meets World, and also the voice of Ron Stoppable, and of course Disney Channel's hit iconic show Kim Possible, and of course Terry McGinnis in Batman and Batman Beyond. I wanted to, imagine Will Friedle as a Power Ranger. He's one of the many celebrities in the past that I wanted to fan cast as Rangers back when during the Disney era and such. And, back when it was the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, era of movies and superhero movies and whatever, I wanted to fan cast Friedle, Ron Stoppable himself, if he was a Blue Power Ranger. in if a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy movie reboot, but it was a little too soon for a reboot. That's why I'm glad I waited until here and on out in the 2010s to do reboots of, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to do so like this. Then it came to mind with also, speaking of Boy Meets World fame, I figured, indirectly, for those who know of me doing Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Rise of Trakeena, my top main choice up to this point when I did this reboot the first time as Rise of Trakeena, I originally was also going to have another Boy Meets World Illuminati, and you may know this particular, 90s heartthrob, face, Ryder Strong, if he was my Blue Galaxy Ranger of Will James. Because now Ryder Strong is somebody that I originally was going to have as a fan cast choice, the top choice. Now, if Will Friedle wasn't working out, I would go with another Boy Meets World Illuminati out of former that out of Ryder Strong, who, by the way, was also in a big, horror movie of 2002, that being Cabin Fever, who, by the way, also features a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy Illuminati in same movie along with same actor in that one. And now, Ryder Strong was my top choice, well, back when I was doing Rise of Trakeena long ago, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted the Blue Ranger to be in likeness of this actor, because, now, admittedly, I have to admit, for someone who watched Boys Meets World, mostly through reruns before I did that film, I kind of do had a man crush on Ryder Strong. Now, don't get me wrong, and no homo here. I mean, it's okay to have, for a guy like me to have a man crush on some actors. I mean, some male actors are good looking and also are great actors. But at the same time, sometimes if some of those actors don't look right for the parts, I'll just switch them over for someone else. But Will Friedle or Ryder Strong could have done just fine when I did these fan films, or back then in the past, because some of them just didn't work. So that's why I decided either who was going to be my next option here. Oh, in between that, there was going to be another actor that was going to be close to resemble my Marsh-Verse Blue Ranger, of Will James. I originally was going to have, in between that, when I originally did the proposed Power Rangers Lost Generation 3 film, yeah, I have done Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan films that were proposed and fan castings attached to those films, but nothing substantiated out of those projects. With, when Will Friedle or so was absent, I was going to go with Kevin Zegers, basically. Hold on for a second. Kevin Zegers, who was in a few movies that I can think of, from movies like Air Bud and that poorly received superhero movie Zoom, featuring young Kate Mara, Tim Allen, and also Courtney Cox in that film. And I felt that Kevin Zegers would fit the Blue Ranger, when I did PRLG 3, well, the original PRLG 3, since I'm doing the real Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3, with release date still unknown at the moment. And I felt that if Will Friedle wasn't working, I would probably see if Kevin Zegers would work. But then again, I mean, either it was going to be Will Friedle, this guy, or Ryder Strong. So it turns out that when I canceled Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Rise of Trakeena over 5 years ago in 2012, then that's when I decided to go back to someone that I originally had in mind or I didn't have in mind at all, for a particular casting choice out of a particular actor Illuminati that I kind of had a partial man crush on a little bit from back in the time when I was obsessed with, a particular, Illuminati of various TV shows, like Jimmy Neutron or The Exorcist and Just Shoot Me, Wendy Malick, of course. So Josh Cook was my final fan casting choice, and this is why I'm using his likeness for all 3 movies as scheduled for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy in my Marsh-Verse straight. Now, Josh Cook, you may know of him for a few things, but he's not really all that significant. He was in a few TV shows, and 2 of them, of course, were on ABC. That's how I discovered him at some point. And those shows somehow bombed drastically. So Big Day and this other show, I think Better Than You was the name of that show. And those shows just did not get him nowhere. Though he was on a few other TV shows before I discovered wanting to fan cast him as the Blue Ranger in my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film series. He was on the final episode of The King of Queens. He was in the Josh Whedon show Dollhouse, episodes on TV shows for guest appearances like Without a Trace, and also was in a few movies that are not as significant, like Quarantine 2 or Snow Globe or Young People which is again, but again, he's just insignificant. But even though I felt that with this kind of casting choice, since now how I first discovered Josh Cook was from the TV show that I brought up many times, or so long ago, even before this channel, Big Day, which was that show that I aforementioned with Wendy Malick and other Illuminati like Miriam Shore and Stephanie Weir in that show. Now, I wonder how many of you remember Just Shoot Me. I mean, not Just Shoot Me, Big Day, that wedding comedy on ABC that went nowhere. Now, I know some of you may remember him on that other show that I mentioned that was also an ABC show that got him nowhere, Better Than You, but then that's how I discovered him to be the Blue Ranger, and I figured, well, bam, I thought he would be the right pick. But even though I wanted to do a Blue Ranger that was not a version of the Lost Galaxy Blue Ranger for this reboot, if he was not to be a Caucasian, an Asian, so I went with a Caucasian Blue instead, because again, despite the lack of Asian actors I can pick from, if I were to represent Kai Chen, who was, by the way, Archie Cow's character from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Now, before we get to more about Will, let's talk a little bit about Kai. Now, for those who know of Lost Galaxy, Kai was one of the security officers of Terra Venture, stricken by the books, chosen to be the Blue Galaxy Ranger by pulling the blue Quasar Saber, wielding the blue Galactazord, and like the rest of the Rangers, has a Jet Jammer, Quasar Launcher, Lyso Ryan Armor, Astro Cycle, and so forth, and also helps the other Galaxy Rangers on their journey across Terra Venture and the galaxy against Scorpius and Trakina's army throughout the 45 episodes of their season. And when their journey was over, then when Kai comes back in Lightspeed Rescue with the other Galaxy Rangers to fend off against Trakina one final time in assistance and help of the Lightspeed Rangers. And yeah, he was played by Archie Coe in the TV show, and even though I have to admit, now looking back at my rewatch of Lost Galaxy, Kai started to grow on me a little. I know I was earlier in some videos related to Lost Galaxy, I was pretty much on the negative side of things with his character. Maybe it was something about Kai that just tended to bug me in the original series. I mean, maybe it was because the way how he was toward Leo earlier on, and I think that's what influenced me to do my Red and Blue Rangers the same. I would think that whenever I think of Leo and Kai's dynamic and, sort of, I hate to say this term, bromance in some way, whenever I think of Leo and Kai's, a little bantering with each other in the first half of Lost Galaxy, or even the entire season throughout, I think of, Captain Kirk and Spock from the original Star Trek. Either the Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner version, or the Zachary Quinto Quest Pine version of Spock and Kirk. I don't know. Basically, I would say that whenever Kai and Leo are on screen together, I think of Spock and Kirk from, of course, Star Trek. So I figured now for my Marsh-Verse Blue Ranger and Red Ranger of Tony and Will again, I wanted to do a dynamic between them in a Kirk and Spock kind of, scenario between the two. Because I felt that with the dynamic with, but the difference between is the Blue Ranger is not alien. Now, maybe I should have made my Blue Galaxy Ranger an alien instead of, the Yellow Ranger. Again, we'll get to, my other Yellow Ranger in another video next time. But I decided to keep him human. Now, I wanted to do alien, characters from another world to be a Ranger in my version of Lost Galaxy, much like, Maya from the actual series. But I decided to keep the Rangers all human and not have one of them being from Miranoi in my version. And I know, when I said in the last video about Tony's character, I just didn't want to do the original Rangers because I felt that if I do the same, archetypes of the Rangers from 1999 of Leo being the stowaway adventurer, Damon being the, comic relief mechanic, Maya, the jungle girl who's misunderstood with things, Kai, the security guard who's no nonsense, stricken by the books, and Kendricks, the scientist chick, So I just didn't want to do the exact same characters again. That's why I came up with my own characters, just for the hell of it. Because, yeah, I mean, Leo's team was great in main continuity, but redoing Lost Galaxy for a fan film in alternate continuity, as a disposal from away from the main continuity. So this is what I've been trying to tell you guys, even in this Redux 5 years later, that I'm not trying to make these fan films to ruin your enjoyment of the actual Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Feel free to look back on that season, on your own time, anytime you want. It's just, for me, I just wanted to express my passion and reimagining and rebooting of Lost Galaxy personally for myself. And if you're not a fan of my fan film stuff, of the standalones where the characters are different and stuff, that is okay, because sometimes half of the content that I post on here again is not meant for everybody. Now, if it's about me talking about the TV show, then I can understand. Now, according to the original video, the blue, like with the rest of the Rangers, which I will get to that featurette soon, they were going to have reactive impact armor suits, like, again, from, recolored from that G.I. Joe movie of said name, from what I said in various videos ago, of the same, even in the Redux, this was going to be the original design, but I decided to drop it as soon as I got into production and go straight back to those ever beloved but somewhat hated Charlie Brown suits. So when we look back on the fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 1, now, I just didn't have the time to develop, like I said in the last video about Tony, that Will, like the other Rangers, are sadly underdeveloped, even though Will had some development somewhere, but the character development was incoherent. You see, when I did my first fan film 5 years ago, I kind of pretty much rushed a lot of the character development for all of my Rangers, because again, I just didn't want to, when I said I was going to do this fan film reboot, changing the Rangers and changing the characters and the personalities, I just did not want to make the characters come off as a bunch of Gary Sues and Mary Sue, and trying to be way better than the original team from Prime Continuity. No offense to Archie Cow or Danny Slavin and Reggie Rowland them. I'm not trying to wipe their Ranger characters out of existence from Prime Power Rangers continuity or anything. It's just, in a separate continuity, I just wanted to imagine Power Rangers Lost Galaxy if there were other individuals that took on the power of the Quasar Sabers to become Lost Galaxy Rangers, and just keep Leo and his team intact away for a while, and that's why even at the time of this Redux, while I'm working on some development on a new Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film reboot with the names of the original Rangers intact, I am working on trying to see what I could do to reimagine the characters like Kai and Leo and Damon and them, so that way, I mean, the characters that I have for these initial movies lately, for the last almost 5, 6, whatever, I don't know, years, would not ruin your enjoyment of those characters. Now, if you have nostalgia for Leo's team, played by Danny Slavin and them, good for you. But what I'm trying to do is something similar to what we had in the past, and not try so much to try to ruin your essence of loving those characters, and then pretty much ruin your childhood for this point. Because for those who have childhood nostalgia for Lost Galaxy, and while I'm doing these movies, I'm not trying my damnedest to try to ruin your childhoods or anything. Basically, let's just put it this way, that maybe I probably partially in some way ruined my own childhood nostalgia with Lost Galaxy. So no wonder when I posted content about my first fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 4.5 years ago on YouTube, obscurely but unlisted, because I don't want any problems with copyright on YouTube, that I pretty much kind of ruined my own childhood and pretty much made the fan film, when I did my very first outing of a movie, like a parody. According to a particular person who commented about my first fan film being like, oh, South Park with Power Rangers, because, characters are, cutouts and all. So I just didn't want to do the exact same mistakes, like I would do in my next movie of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakina. Now, anyway, quickly before I wrap up, the first movie had my Blue Ranger of Will James being an ass until he opened up midway through, so that's spoilers when I re-release my first fan film in better quality once April is up, and I'm still working on that. But when we get to Wrath of Trakina, however, that's when my character starts to be that goofball, comic relief Blue Ranger, even though if he's like the simpleton of the team, whether if he can't take his job as a Terra Venture GSA officer seriously in this alternate continuity or not. So that's one of the reasons why I just didn't want to screw up Kai's essence as character from Prime Continuity, because I just have no intentions on ruining his character. So there's nothing much more about Will though, but even though Will was going to be one of those characters that once more underdeveloped, I just didn't want my Blue Galaxy Ranger to be too much like a clone of Kai, even if his ethnic race has changed and whitewashing aside notwithstanding. So I'll try my damnedest not to make my character be like Kai all the way and make him more like his own character, basically wearing a GSA Terra Venture uniform. So that was my intent when I did these movies. So nothing about that my Blue Galaxy Ranger is, I just didn't want him to be a complete, like I said before, final thoughts, carbon copy of Kai, but alternate race and all that differently. And there's just nothing more I can say about my character because, again, as much as I said so much about AJ and Tony last time, what is more to say about some of the other Rangers? So that's why come back next time in another week or two when I release, or if I have the time next time, to release my other Mega Morphin Grid case study archive that was followed after this, but it was released according to the original video 2 days later on my Green Ranger of Lost Galaxy Marsh-Verse, Brown Jones. So come back for that one next time.